Hey, it's Vicky, and today I am here to talk about the books I read in September. September was a dark reading month for me, but also a very good one. I had 3 5-star reads in September, so let's dive in. So the first book that I completed in the month of September was a anticipated release for me, and it did not disappoint. I read The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, and I actually don't have my copy because I already lent it out to a friend because when I finished it, I just felt like it was a book I had to have somebody else read, and they were looking for a book to read, and that was the one I lent out. So this is a thriller, mystery, suspense, about a young woman named Shay who, when she's in college, she is part of a patriarchal cult and leaves that cult right when she finishes college. And the current timeline is 8 years later, and a girl that she had befriended and who was also part of this cult with her turns up dead. And so she feels like she has to go figure out what happened to her because she has a feeling that it has something to do with the cult. Though this girl's death was ruled a suicide, she thinks the cult had something to do with it. So it sort of goes on from there, and this book was so intense. It was so intense and so dark, but it was one of the best thrillers I've read in a really long time. I don't often give thrillers 5 stars, but this one got 5 stars for me. And I think the reason was because a lot of the themes that it explored were just super interesting because you're talking about a patriarchal cult. So it talks a lot about gender roles and like power dynamics between men and women. It had a lot of erotic scenes, which I'm not used to. And I won't say they were bad. Some of them were disturbing. But yeah, it was just a page turner. I could not put this book down. It was really good, but dark. It has a lot of trigger warnings. So if like you're a person that pays attention to trigger warnings, wants to know them, definitely look them up before you start this book because it is dark. It deals with a lot of stuff, but it was so good. And the ending like floored me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, this is, like I said, the best thriller I've read in years. I loved it. It was a 5-star. So the next stack of books I have here, I read for series September, and I did a whole vlog about these books, so I'm not going to talk about them here, but I read a bunch of books and I will link the vlog down below so that I'm not repeating myself. But I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books, yes, in that vlog, but there was one that I didn't really talk about, so I'm going to talk about that one here. So the kids and I read the first book in the Series of Unfortunate Events series by Lemony Snicket. This is The Bad Beginning, and this one is about 3 orphans, the Baudelaire children. We have Violet, Klaus, and Sunny, and like I said, in the beginning of this book, they are orphaned, and they are sent to live with this relative, Count Olaf. And basically he's not a very good dude, and the Baudelaire children have quite the fortune coming their way when Violet comes of age, and it is very clear that Count Olaf wants that money. And the story is basically him being just awful and trying to come up with a way to get to that money. And this is a dark story because you're talking about, 3 orphans and they lose their parents and then they're with this horrible person, and he's quite the villain, Count Olaf, but he's the type of villain that's also kind of fun. And this book is also, though dark, it is fun, and the kids really enjoyed this. They thought it was fun. They weren't like bummed out by it or anything like that, and they want to keep reading the series. So I got the next couple books in the series so that we can continue. But yeah, this one we enjoyed it a lot, and we gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in September was also a little bit of a dark, intense read, and that was The Chain by Adrienne McKinty. This was about a woman who gets a call one day that her teenage daughter has been kidnapped, and the only way to get her daughter back is to kidnap another child. hence the title, The Chain. And you have to kind of keep the chain going. And this, as a parent, was a very scary read, very intense, because you really put yourself in that position. Like, what would I do? What sorts of illegal acts would I do to save, protect my own child? Including, would I do something to another child, another family, things like that. So it had a lot of just like thought-provoking type stuff going on for me. And the first half was super intense. Like, I was listening to this on audio, and I was like finding other things to do, because I normally listen to my audiobooks while I'm doing chores. And I was like trying to find other things to do because I didn't want to stop listening to it. It was like super intense. The second half kind of slowed down a little bit, lost a little bit of steam. And then the ending, though it was good, it was also pretty damn convenient. like what are the odds, right? It was kind of, yeah, it was just one of those like convenient endings. However, overall, this was a super entertaining book. Super, like I said, super fast paced, like didn't want to put it down. And even though the ending was a little bit weak, I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read on my Kindle, and that was Finding Jake by Brian Reardon. And this was a mystery suspense, I would classify it as, about a father who has 2 teenage kids, Jake and I can't remember what his daughter's name is, but anyways, they're both in high school, and one day a shooting occurs at their high school. And he rushes to this scene. He is taken to a church with all the other parents who are there to be reunited with their children. And he, as the numbers dwindle down, he starts to realize that one of 2 things has happened here. Either Jake was killed, he was one of the victims of the shooting, or he was the perpetrator. And the story sort of goes back and forth in time. You first meet Jake when his mother is pregnant with him, and then kind of it alternates chapters, like with a chapter taking part in present day, with the shooting and the after effects, and then the next chapter goes back in time, and every time you go back in time, Jake gets a little bit older, and you are sort of getting to know him as a person, and the narrator, who is his father, is sort of kind of trying to figure out if there were things about Jake that he didn't realize at the time that could explain what's going on now. Because in the present day, you're not really sure for a while what's going on, and he's trying to find Jake because he doesn't know where he is. And this book, I appreciated the themes it explored in terms of parenting, because in the book, Jake's father, I think his name is Simon, the narrator, he's a stay-at-home dad, which isn't super common, and it turns out that Brian Reardon himself, the author, he was a stay-at-home dad for a while, so he kind of was writing this, having that sort of like, he's having lived through being a stay-at-home parent and being a stay-at-home dad, because it is a different vibe for dads, because typically it is, you know, the woman that stays home, and he struggles with that in a lot of ways. So not only like the struggles of being a stay-at-home parent, but being the dad that stays home. He's also very introverted, and Jake is also an introverted child. And so it kind of talks about that too, like what it's like to raise a child that is an introvert, and how a lot of times those type of kids kind of get a bad rap because they're shy or they'd rather spend time alone. A lot of people see that as a negative, and this book kind of explores how, you know, that might not be the case, and just what it's like even when you yourself are introverted and have to like interact with other parents and things like that. So I liked that part. However, the actual plot of this, I was incredibly bored by. It took me forever to read this book because I was just really bored by it sounds horrible, but I was really bored by the shooting plot, because there was so much where it was like Simon is just like sitting in his house, or at one point he's sitting in a hotel room and he's just thinking like, I gotta find Jake, I gotta find Jake. And it's like, go find him then. Like, stop saying you have to find him and get out there. Because I am like thinking to myself, if this were my kid, I would be out there all day, all night, combing through my neighborhood trying to find my kid, and he's just like sitting there like, I gotta find Jake, but like he's not finding Jake. And so it was like kind of annoying. So by the end, I was just kind of over it, to be honest. And like I said, though I appreciated the themes it talked about, the actual plot and story and characters and stuff were just nah. And so yeah, I gave this 2 stars. I wasn't a huge fan. The next book that I read was another 5-star read, and this book is one that like was just such a powerful book, and one that is going to stick with me for a long time, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. And this is about a young girl named Vanessa who, well, we see her in 2 different timelines. We see her first as a 32-year-old woman who is sort of just like going through life, and then in the other timeline, you see her as a 15-year-old. And the story is about how she had a sexual relationship with one of her teachers when she was 15 years old. And this book was, like I said, just so powerfully written. I loved how the 2 timelines really worked together, because in the first timeline where you meet Vanessa and she's 15, she's telling you her story through like her 15-year-old eyes. And so she's talking about this teacher and just the way that she was manipulated and everything. But at the time, she doesn't see it that way. She's seeing it through 15-year-old eyes. But you, the reader, see it completely differently than she does, though there are aspects about her relationship with him that she realizes are not right. And then when she's in the like present day timeline where she's 32 years old, she's also still very much grappling with what that relationship meant to her and what it did to her, because she's, even at 32, doesn't want to admit that she was abused by this man, that the relationship was not consensual and everything, and she's really fighting against that. And it's very much about her coming to terms with this relationship and the huge impact it has had on her life, because even at 32 years old, though the relationship is over with, she is still very much affected by it every day and has affected her life in a lot of ways. And I just loved the writing in this. There were so many things about Vanessa that I identified with, like that I saw in myself as a 15-year-old. Like, there's just things about her. I might have been the timeline, because the timeline in the past when she's 15 is 2001. I was 17 in 2001. And there's just things about her, like the type of music she listened to, and the fact that she like sat in her room and wrote poetry, and English was her favorite subject. She wanted to be a writer. Like, that was me. Like, that was me. And so there were things about Vanessa that I just really identified with. And I just think that the writing was so well done. And this is a topic that I think just really does need to be explored more, talked about more, because it is, sadly, it is a lot more prevalent than I think we realize, that there are people out there that are in positions where they are around children and they should not be. And children are taken advantage of and abused, and yeah, so this was so good. It's dark though. Again, it's a very dark story, but also one, like I said, that was just very just affecting. Like, it just really, it has stuck with me, and I think it will for a really long time. But it's like one of those books that, like I say, definitely read it if it interests you. But if it's something that you think will trigger you, obviously steer clear. But yes, I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in September was like a great fall read. I definitely have to say, if you want to read this book, read it during the fall. That is The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook. And this is about a woman named Liv who goes to Scotland, this little like island in Scotland, with her 3 daughters, Sapphire, Luna, and Clover. She goes there to paint a mural in this lighthouse because she's an artist, and they go there to stay. And this lighthouse is kind of old and decrepit, and there's like rumors around that it's like haunted, that it's cursed because way back in the past there were women that were accused of witchcraft and were burned there, like in that area. And so they say that it's cursed and that it is also inhabited by these little creatures called wildlings who appear to look like children, but really they are there to do really bad things to you and your family. And so you meet Liv and you find out that one night she and 2 of her daughters disappear, never to be seen again. And then there's a present day timeline with the like only daughter still around, Luna, and she gets a call one day, and like I said, it's been like 20 some years since her family disappeared. She gets a call one day that her sister Clover has been found, and when she goes to find her, she's expecting to find her sister like 20 something years old, and no, she's still 7 years old. And so then it becomes like, okay, is this really Clover or is this a wildling in disguise? And so it had it just had a really good like fall witchy vibe, the whole setting, like with this like old lighthouse and you're right by the sea and it's like cold and windy and just like all of it just had a great fall setting. I really enjoyed that. And the story actually was pretty decent. If you like stories about witches and like witch trials and things, I think like this would be good for you. The only thing about this though was for some reason there were parts of it that I just was kind of like confused. Like I found myself getting some of the characters mixed up, and I kind of wanted, there were certain aspects of the plot that I kind of like wanted more detail. I wanted more information. I just felt like it was just kind of like said in a sentence and then I was like, wait, what? Did I miss something? Or like it would go to the next chapter and I would start reading it and feel like I missed something. I don't know. So, but overall, like, this had a good twist at the end. It had a good ending. Like I said, it had great fall vibes, good mystery, great setting. So yeah, all in all, I gave this 3 stars. I enjoyed it. All right, so those are all the books that I read in September. It was a pretty good month, guys. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had 3 5-star reads in a month. It was good. So, and I also knocked out a ton of books for series September, which was a goal of mine. So I'm super happy about that. So yeah, let me know down below what your favorite book of September was, because I would love to know what everybody was loving in September. And that's it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week and I will chat with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.